is up, everyone? Welcome to Level 7. It is time for another episode of the Agents of Fandom podcast, and it is Captain America Brave New World time. We are reviewing the brand new movie from Marvel Studios. I'm your host, TJ Zwarych, joined, as always, by my guy, my good buddy and co-host, Damon Gray. How you doing?
Good evening, everyone. It is late here on the East Coast. It is 11 p.m. So anyone here on the East Coast who is watching this live, I guess this is what it's like.
I appreciate you doing the late show. I just got out of my Brave New World screening about 45 minutes ago. Rushed home, made it just in time. And we're not breaking this thing down alone, Damon. We have a wonderful, wonderful guest today. Author of MCU, The Reign of Marvel Studios, the must-have book if you're a Marvel fan, where you can also find the name of the Agents of Fandom on the back. Review from our friend, our writer, Carlos Freites. Shout out to Carlos. We got Dave Gonzales joining us. How you doing, Dave?
Hello. Doing okay. As you can see here on screen, I have a very important question that maybe we can answer at the end of the show. Who is the vice president in the MCU? Let's think about that as we go forward.
President Ellis is back. President, I don't remember Dermot Mulroney's name, but
President Scrollface.
He's Scrollface. He's back as the vice president. He came back on, but I really don't know. We haven't seen a vice president since.
I just think you would be a little bit more involved in the campaign that we see at the beginning of this movie. I would just think a little bit, but you know, we'll get into it. I have a question. I almost introduced myself as Vice President Dave Gonzales so I could like get in there, but I don't think I'm quite as qualified.
I mean, as we know today in the United States of America, you don't have to be qualified to be participating in any form of government.
I guess whatsoever. Me and the vice president, we both written books. Mine was based on facts. So I think I have that going for me. But yeah, you know, maybe I am just like JD Vance. Maybe we're very similar.
I like you a little bit better. Let us know your thoughts of Captain America Brave New World in chat. Smash the like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell. We got live shows coming almost every day of the week. On Wednesdays, we're talking Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. On Thursdays, we're talking Invincible. On Fridays, we talk Severance. On Saturdays, we have the Comic Corner. So make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Follow the Agents of Fandom on socials at Agents Fandom on TikTok and Twitter, Agents of Fandom everywhere else. You can find Ryan Cortero's wonderful, truly amazing Captain America Brave New World review, spoiler-free, up on agentsfandom.com. You can find my interview with Julius Ona, the director of Captain America Brave New World, up on our YouTube page as well. So check it all out. Let's dive into the movie. Or before we even do, I was debating whether or not I wanted to have another edition of Whatcha Watchin today. But Dave, I haven't seen you in a while. I can't remember if it was Deadpool and Wolverine, or when was the last time we linked up for a podcast?
That might have been, yeah.
I want to know right now for you, what are you watching? What television shows or movie binges have you been up to?
Well, I haven't. This was my first new movie of the year. I've been kind of slacking on new movies, but we are right at like a television sweet spot precipice. So I'm deep into Severance. Had to do that before I signed on tonight. This Friday, Yellow Jacket season 3 is coming, and this Sunday, White Lotus season 3 is coming. So it's just like TV's back for me. There's even a Spider-Man show that I have to catch up on because I waited to see it like bank. So like, I'm about to fall deep into television.
I couldn't agree more. It's such an amazing time for television right now, animated and live action. And Severance is definitely my favorite thing that I'm watching right now. I haven't seen episode 5 yet, but we will be breaking that down live here on the podcast Friday, 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific. Myself, Rachel Leishman, Rachel Tollison, Leah Marilla. We're going to have a really good time breaking down episode 5. Damon, what you been reading? What you been watching? I'm going to skip myself because I'm on Punisher season 2 for my Defenderverse rewatch. I just watched all of She-Hulk. I just rewatched all of She-Hulk. I've been catching pieces of everything that has Matt Murdock in it. And I've been doing a lot of rewatching, but not a whole lot of new stuff except for the shows we're covering here on the podcast.
I read all of Magic's comics appearances since the 1980s because I'm a maniac.
Yeah, nice. You know what? How did you appreciate that? Because there's part of me that wants to do that with Sentry in this time period that we have. Because like I have got some Sentry memories.
Century is much more doable than a character that's been around since the 80s.
I could.
Anything
Especially
to give
when
World
you-
War Hulk
yeah.
a little reread, I will push people along to that. It's the only Sentry story that I know. And so I definitely gotta get more versed in Sentry before we get up to Thunderbolt. But let's talk about Captain America, Brave New World. Spoiler free, just general thoughts off the bat. Dave, what did you think of this movie?
I think this is a movie that they decided they were going to do and maybe gave it a budget and maybe gave it a cast. And then so much stuff started to happen that this is the first time maybe for me that I really feel the sunk cost fallacy for Marvel here, where I think I just went back to the apple too many times, to the point where it's hard for me because this isn't like a bad movie. Like this isn't a Madam Web or anything even close to that. This is a movie that sort of feels like everybody, there might be a version of this movie where everybody was like singing, but I don't think they're all doing the same version. There's some I think the action by Julius Ona, the stuff that looks like he direct is great. There's some action sequences that I think involve Giancarlo Esposito's character that obviously were filmed later that kind of take place in a gray green screen environment that I could sort of feel was different cinematography wise, but there are parts of these movies. The Red Hulk looks great. I think Anthony Mackie is incredibly charming, even though his character has sort of been reduced to like, I'm the Captain America that also used to be a therapist, so therefore I'm the Captain America that could talk to you about stuff, which I enjoy. I just feel like because this movie sort of is a bunch of puzzle pieces put together, it doesn't necessarily work for me like I would hope it would. Very specifically, there's a scene about midway through the film where they're like, Sam and Joaquin have ditched their smartphones. They've fallen off the grid. And the next scene, they're both in the car using their phones. And I'm like, yeah, editing's hard sometimes. It happens. So it's like little unforced errors like that are a little bit disappointing. But I do think ultimately this movie will end up being important. I had real Age of Ultron vibes when this ended, where I'm like, I see why everything's in there, but I feel like it's the middle step to like, normal Hulk and Red Hulk high-fiving over Betty's head and then, punching Dr. Doom in the face. Like that's what we're building to with this type of story. And I appreciate that. It's just because of the mess that Marvel's in right now, this ended up feeling a little bit more like an abbreviated season 2 of Falcon and the Winter Soldier than the big Captain America 4 movie I'd hoped it was.
I agree with that thought process quite a bit, actually. I said it to Damon off screen a little bit. I could have actually seen a world, and I might have liked it better, where this was a show that was more drawn out throughout, where like Sidewinder's a villain for the first 4 episodes, then we really start picking things up with the leader, and then the Red Hulk gets exploded, and we learn the full scope of the leader's plan in the final few episodes of the season. Whereas I think Captain America and Winter Soldier could have made like the very first great or Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Captain America and the Winter Soldier, if you want to call it that, great like debut Cap movie for Sam. Damon, what were your spoiler-free thoughts? Words are hard. Editing's hard. Words are hard. Spoiler-free thoughts on Captain America: Brave New World.
I went into this movie not expecting a whole lot. Captain America movies, as we've talked about previously on this pod, have never been my favorite franchise from Marvel, albeit outside of Civil War. And let's look at that. Like, that's barely a Captain America movie at that point. That is Avengers 2.5, if you will. So I wasn't so high on this movie going into it. My excitement levels weren't there. And I think it kind of just like met my anticipation for what we got. To bounce back off of what you two were saying and stuff that TJ, you and I were talking before we started the show. This felt like a 16-issue run of a Captain America comic that was written by 4 different writers, each for a different arc along the way. And I've seen that before. And I'm not necessarily saying this is a bad movie either. This is not a bad movie. It's a fine movie. and it's clunky, and the things that work, but the things that don't work, don't work. I was the first act of this. I'm kind of sitting there. I'm like, I'm enjoying this a lot more than I expected. This is cruising. We are flying. And then the second act hits, and I'm like, ooh, I'm not digging this right now. I'm kind of like waiting for things to move on. Then the third act hits. I'm back in, and the fourth act, a little bit of a simmer in the finale. So it's a little bit of a roller coaster ride. There's some things in here I liked. The majority of it, I would say, was enjoyable, but overall, a fine movie.
I think that I totally feel like the different writers portion, the stitched together aspect of this a little bit. I think this was a very good, solid movie. It does fit. One complaint I've had with recent MCU movies where I'm looking at it and go, damn, I think they had all the pieces here to make a really great movie. It was just a little undercooked or overcooked. Like all the ingredients where the chef had all the right ingredients, they just set the timer on the stove for the wrong amount of time here. And I felt that way so much about Thor: Love and Thunder. And I got the same vibes from this one where it's like, I liked it. I had fun. I think this is better than Thor: Love and Thunder was.
It's
but
less ridiculous.
yeah, I think this is a better movie than Thor: Love and Thunder, but I got to me, it was like this was good. I think it could have been better though with the pieces that they had in place, but I do still think this was a good movie. It reminded me a lot of like a Ant-Man and the Wasp, where the story didn't really do a whole lot for me, but it was really fun getting to see the characters interact with each other. I do think personally, and this was a constant with most of the reviews that I read going in, this movie did do the most important thing it needed to do, and that was give Sam Wilson a great debut as Captain America. And while the overall story didn't really do it for me, I think Sam as Cap was pretty darn great. And I think Anthony Mackie in this role is doing a really wonderful job. I got the whole, this is a Captain America who is empathetic and who cares about others that they were talking about in the press tour. I very much got that portrayal from this performance. I think right from the start where he essentially goes, and well, if you haven't seen Captain America and Brave New World yet, time to X out, time to pause, time to come back, hit the like button, but come back later when you have seen it. We're going into full spoiler mode.
You've seen a lot of it. If you've seen the trailers to Captain America: Brave New World, you've seen a lot of it. I don't think we're going to be surprising you here. That's sort of like when this movie started, the person I was sitting next to in my screening turned to me and it was like, what are you expecting from this movie? And I'm like, I think I know what happens. I would be interested to see if I'm surprised. And I kind of wasn't. And like, that's sort of like where I kind of wish the thrill was back a little bit more. In terms of like, there's so many things. I love what Damon was saying about how the first act, you're like, yeah, I'm digging this, is because they're setting up all these character arcs where it's like, we're gonna go after adamantium, where Carl Lumbly is back, and hopefully you watch Falcon and the Winter Soldier because they really briefly tell you who he is, and he's really important to, I think, one of the better plot lines in this movie. But he does sort of get abandoned later on because we have to deal with other things. There's Shira Haas's Ruth Bat Saraf was going to be a different character. They didn't replace the one time you could see her super suit through the jacket, which I thought was kind of interesting.
Yep.
But what they have done is they made her a Black Widow. And when I heard that she was, a Black Widow, a former Black Widow trained in the Red Room, whatever it was, I'm like, oh, this is actually great. Because we saw Ross in Black Widow at like sort of the bringing down of the Red Room. Maybe he like, while Natasha was out saving girls, Ross was also out saving girls. Like maybe there's a really deep backstory here. She never calls herself a Black Widow, and nobody says it really. Like, I think maybe once they say it where I could see their lips on screen. And I'm just like, if you're gonna switch it to something that actually connects back to the character, wouldn't you want to do that to enliven your character things? I think my biggest problem with this movie is, with the exception of Thaddeus Ross, all the character arcs stop halfway through or pick up halfway through and are just like, yeah, then, oh, don't you know Carl Lumbly and Ruth Bat Saraf are friends? They're going to go to a basketball game. I'm like, why? When? They don't know each other. They don't know each other. He was in prison while she was doing everything. Anyway, they're just
Well,
little
she
things
was
like that.
putting him there.
Yeah, and it makes it very frustrating. The Samuel Stern stuff, the leader stuff, I appreciate where it's going, but there is a point where his plan falls apart and he goes, no, and then just shows up to turn himself in. I don't know why.
They had that article real quick written, by the way. That was within minutes.
Yeah. It's an interesting group of choices, and the thing that made me the saddest about it, and I'll reiterate it again, is like it feels like a whole bunch of producers trying to put something together, and I have a real hard time seeing the shining great parts pop through this movie, because I think a lot of it goes to Harrison Ford, and I only have guesses as to why. He does have a full arc. He is capable of being alone in a hallway, and they just do red stuff on him later, and like that's not acting. I think that's worthwhile. But I am just wondering, what was the point of this? It feels, I mean, please disagree with me if at any point it feels like what I'm saying is wrong, but this feels like this should be Cap creates the Avengers to stop the president movie. It should be Avengers 3.5, to go back to what Damon was saying. But for some reason, it's not. And then they sort of like at the end of the movie, he's like, well, I guess I should form the Avengers. And I'm like, what? When Ross is like, form the Avengers, and he's like, well, what happens if we disagree? And then the president gets deposed, and you're like, well, now I'll form the Avengers. Again, who's the vice president? What happened in this movie to make you change your mind about a government-sponsored Avengers? And then I've seen the Thunderbolts trailer. I know that Val stands up in front of like some judge thing, is like, the Avengers aren't coming to save us. So I know we accomplished something, and maybe this is giving back to the Age of Ultron feeling. I know we accomplished something. I don't know what it is yet. That's weird.
I truly thought at one point in this movie, when they were talking about how, first of all, they called it Celestial Island, which I thought was hilarious, because I'm like, where did they even get the word celestial from? Yeah, we'll move on from that regardless. I thought, because I'm actually a big fan of this run, that by the end of this film, Anthony Mackie, Captain America, was going to make the Avengers home in the Celestial, as we've seen in that run. And I thought that was going to be like the big moment. It's like, you know what? No, none of you nations get this thing.
This Avengers
is ours
island
type of thing.
It's Krakoa.
Yeah, I mean,
no.
it's not Krakoa, but it's a big adamantium island. I don't know. TJ, how did you feel about the fact that Captain America 4 is Eternals 2 and Incredible Hulk 2 and not necessarily Captain America 4?
I appreciated it because I did just do a rewatch of Incredible Hulk last night. And even though I don't see Edward Norton's Bruce Banner and Mark Ruffalo's Bruce Banner as anything remotely close to the same person, and so I have trouble viewing it as a part of the MCU, I think in a vacuum it is a good movie, or a totally fine movie. And I enjoyed those aspects, but I wanted more for Sam. It did feel like Sam was the main character in Ross's story, and I really wanted it to be a little bit more Sam focused. And I get he had all the character growth he needed through Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and now we're picking him up like confident and ready to go. But it still felt like it was Sam in Ross's story a little bit. And I thought Sam was so great every time, like his action sequences, his leadership with his Falcon. I thought it was all really great. It just felt like he was in somebody else's story a little bit.
Yeah, it was a weird movie that it really feels like it wants to be a team up movie, but they spend all this time being like, no one's gonna team up here. Yeah, it's Brave New Worlds. It's a curious one. I would be interested to figure out if like next year at this time we start learning a little bit more of what this used to be. Like I would have told you up until, I don't know, maybe last week that Amadeus Cho was in this movie, because I heard from some people who I think saw a test screening. Why would they lie to me?
Yeah, I'm in a group chat with a few people who were very confident that Amadeus Cho was in this movie, and we're just like, what in the hell? I know he was, and then they didn't get him. before, like, Damon, I'll let you get
No,
your
because I was
thoughts
going to say,
on
just to
Beige
bounce off
Noting.
of that. No, just to bounce off of that. At one point, I was fully convinced in this movie that they kept this a secret, that like when the US and Japan are like getting into this like air battle, that they were straight up going to send the Agents of Atlas in there. I was like fully convinced at one point, and then it didn't. I was like, but it's always like I could see something like that happening.
Damon, I want to know your thoughts specifically, not on the movie, not on the plots, not on the side characters. How was Sam Wilson as Captain America, and how was Anthony Mackie's performance?
I liked him as Captain America. I do agree with Dave that they kind of a little bit in this boiled him down to just like he's Captain America, but also a therapist. So he'll talk you down when you're having a bad time. But I really appreciated the action sequences. I really liked that they addressed several times in this film the whole like not having the super soldier serum in him, because there probably are a fair amount of people who would go into this movie who may not have seen the Falcon and Winter Soldier, who don't know that they addressed that there as well, but they kind of double down on it because now he's literally going up against a freaking Hulk at this point, right? So it's like he even jokes at one point, he's like, I should have taken this dang thing. But that's part of the reason. Like,
Bucky was wrong. I should have taken serum, whatever he said. That was pretty hilarious.
There was a couple pretty good jokes in here that I got a chuckle out of, but I have really appreciated as well, like, because he doesn't have that strength, the use of his suit and like the jetpack. So in order for him to push back against something, you could see the jetpack that he has kind of like pushing back to help him with that. I was like, okay, that's a cool way to show that he can still put off these feats, but also, yeah, he's gonna have to rely on his technology to help him out. So just him as Cap, I thought he was a solid Cap. I thought this movie, at least in most of its parts, did him justice in that regard.
Dave, Harrison Ford steps in as Thunderbolt Ross, and although I couldn't like fully get into the whole like they were doing a lot of leaning on Incredible Hulk of like, I miss my daughter. I miss my daughter so much. She is all I care about. And I gotta say, the Liv Tyler stuff as Betty Ross was to me the worst part of this movie. I thought it was so ridiculous and underused.
That's not the first scene she shot. She was there for a funeral when this movie was first shot. I don't know what this thing where she shows up is, but yeah, Liv Tyler, I hope you come back for more than 30 seconds. That would just be nice, I think.
That was criminal. The usage of Liv Tyler in this movie was criminal. But what did you think of Harrison Ford's performance and the overall arc of Ross? Because it seemed like he was a little bit more featured than Sam was even.
Yeah, I like it. I understand why you put Harrison Ford first. Obviously, I was born in the 80s. Like Harrison Ford, he shows up. I have only had the pleasure of being in the same room with the man once, as I did the press junket for Morning Glory, that movie he did about morning news. And he's one of those people who, when he jokes, he doesn't do anything with his face or tone of voice that tells you he's joking. So real talk, I'm terrified of Harrison Ford. In this movie, Harrison Ford, I think, is doing a pretty good job. It looks sort of like he's having fun. And I know that because, again, I've seen Morning Glory. I know what it looks like when he's not having fun. He's definitely having fun with it. And they do that nice thing with the Hulk where, the Hulk kind of looks like the person who plays it. So Red Hulk looks like a super ripped Indiana Jones, and I kind of dig that. I love that. I think he did some great stuff here. I think it does seem like he's kind of like my daughter, but they don't give him a lot of scenes where he gets to have true reactions with people until Sam sort of like confronts him and they're yelling back and forth about the leader. And I think that's what Harrison Ford is good at. He's an actor's actor. He could take, as we've seen with, I don't know, original New Hope Star Wars, he could take basically a line that can't be read and make it seem like there's something behind it. So I think he's a real powerhouse here if they're going to keep him around. Did they need to make him president to do this arc? That's something I was questioning sort of like at the end. Like just big, guy who after Secret Invasion is like, maybe we're trusting the military more now than we're trusting elected officials. And like, that could be something. And you could sidestep the whole problem they have themselves in with the current American president drawing analogs to fucking Red Hulk. I'm sorry, bad language. to Mr. Red Hulk. But it's I think Harrison Ford does a great job. I would love to see him again if it happens. And he probably also does the best job because again, I think he's the one who's best served by this movie. He starts somewhere and it's like he sold everybody that he was going to change, but did he really change? And we go through some complications with that. And at the end, we're at least told he changed. I would love it if when presidents did something wrong, they were like, whoops, my bad, I'm going to step down. That I think would be my hope for reality. But at least we get it here.
That'd be great. That'd be really great. I realized I was trying to interject and I was like, hey, come on, I'm speaking loud enough. But no, I was muted. And so you didn't even get to hear it whatsoever. But I do think there's a awesome question from Braden Rebar in chat, son of a co-host of mine over at for a Roto-Grinders podcast that we do for the NFL. But he wants to know, like, if I could ask the director something after I've seen the movie, what would it be? And honestly, I don't think there's anything different on the record I would want to ask. I don't think there's anything he would tell me in an interview that I would really still want to ask, but I would just love to ask him, what was you? What was not you? What parts of this movie were taken out? What parts of this movie were in there from the beginning? Why did you make these changes? Who did these changes come from compared to these ones? And that would kind of be what I'd want, the conversation I'd want to have with him, is really the behind the scenes look that he'd probably never tell me in an interview, but something that you can only get from, in phases 1 through 3. If you read the Marvel Studios, when you really get the behind the scenes look, because I do find it so crazy that this project did seem like something they didn't really have a plan for or had too many plans for, and that they whipped it together and did a darn good job of whipping it together. But the crazy thing is as we know from reading the book, they had very few plans that stayed together throughout phases 1 to 3. They just did an incredible job of working their way through chaos. Starting phase 4 through phase 5, they had a plan. They had a concrete plan. And then a pandemic happened, and then a writer's strike, and then an actor's strike, and then your lead big bad gets convicted of domestic abuse or charged with domestic abuse, whatever it was. I don't want to speak wrong legally. But so it's kind of why I want to know what happened. What was the original plan before things started getting all crazy? Damon, what were your thoughts on Thunderbolt Ross's performance, Harrison Ford in the role, and then feel free to lead us to where you want to go next. I do want to have a question I got to pose for you guys, though.
I'll be quick on Ross, just because I cannot look at Harrison Ford and not see Harrison Ford. And it's really tough when he's replacing an actor as well. And there's a very quick scene at the very beginning of the movie where you see Harrison Ford with the Thunderbolt Ross mustache. And first of all, I laughed when I saw that because like I never thought I'd actually see him do that. And then second of all, I was like, I kind of wish he kept that because it would have made me not see Harrison Ford as much.
You looked cool.
This is like how many presidents have we seen Harrison Ford play? I mean, obviously Air Force One. But maybe it's just he's in the president's office. He's shaming the president in Patriot games. But yes, this does sort of feel like there is a part of my brain that, like Damon, was just like, oh, 90s politics, Harrison Ford. I know this person.
It really was trying to give 80s, 90s spy thriller vibes throughout this movie. There was sometimes I felt like it almost looked grainy, as if they were trying to give us like the 80s spy thriller vibe throughout this movie. And the score definitely felt that way as well. We get, in addition to Red Hulk, we also get Samuel Stern's the leader. We get Sidewinder, played by Giancarlo Esposito. What I want to ask you both is, does the MCU, this is a question that's been asked a million times before, starting in phase 1 and 2 all the way through now, does the MCU have a villain problem? Because as a whole, all 3 of these were fairly underwhelming as in terms of like a scary big bad for this movie. But what I realized with this one is I don't think that there is by any means a villain problem. I think the MCU has a letting the villain cook problem. Whereas we see somebody like Christian Bale as Gore the God Butcher, and he is so fucking cool and sinister and scary, but it kind of felt like he was sidelined for the movie. And now with this one, I really thought aspects of the leader were super, super cool, but it just felt like they didn't let him cook. We're talking about all his probabilities and his ability to see
into the future. Apparently,
89% chance this happens. I'm doing the exact same thing as Zola's algorithm, but I can just do it in my brain. But it kind of seemed like he was like, okay, this is the most probable outcome, so this is what I'm going to plan for. If you do anything other than the most probable outcome, I'm fucked. I'm screwed. I have no backup plan. I kind of just thought that like the villains were intriguing and cool, but they did not let them cook. What did you think, Dave?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's villain overload more than it's like a villain problem, because I do like some of the complications that the story does with our various villains. I don't know exactly what we gained by having, I mean, outside of Giancarlo Esposito understands his assignment, what we gained out of taking all the Serpent Society and squishing them just into Sidewinder. I did sort of chuckle at his like, and when I break out of prison, I'll kill you, Captain America. I'm like, oh, he's a thing now? He's a thing? He wasn't just
he's the new Batroc. That's what he is. He's the new Batroc the Leaper.
Yeah, I mean, I could appreciate that, but also if it is that, then I'm just wondering, did you just waste Giancarlo Esposito? We may never get there again. But yeah, I like the idea of everything about the leader until after they get out of like Echo Base 1. And then the leader's just sort of like a free agent picking up the plot threads that they forgot about. And he's like, oh, right. He gave the pills to his friend. We can't have him get that far ahead. So why don't we have the leader like kill his friend? And I'm like, great. You know what? I wouldn't have even remembered that he gave the pills to his friend. So there's like still some of that patchwork thing done there. And I know that Tim Blake Nelson gave an interview about how that, you know, he kind of doesn't know what the final performance is because he shot so many different versions of it. So maybe Marvel doesn't have a villain problem. Maybe Marvel has a characters besides the Hulk in the world of the Hulk problem. Just because, like, I don't know. Did it feel weird to anybody that this movie wasn't about the super soldier serum? Because, like, considering that's what created the first Hulk, and that's what Stearns technically has in his head. And then, like, they're like, oh, no, he just gave you gamma and, like, little pills. And I'm like, the last Falcon of the Winter Soldier series took, like, a whole detour to be about the super soldier serum. So I thought this was going to be the serum people versus the Hulk people. We were at least going to connect those dots. But that's actually the one thing that's the one dot the leader doesn't connect. He's like, I've been working for 15 years. I'm the Project 2025 of President Ross. And like, I have everything like worked out. And I'm like, well, but like, what about the super soldier serum? That seems like, are we done cracking that? We're spending so much time, half a in-universe century trying to crack that formula. And now we just don't care. You can just put gamma in people's blood if it was that easy. I'm very confused about some of the rules around the hulking, and I'm wondering if the problem is we keep trying to put the Hulk in like, I don't know, this one's a political thriller that has to end with the president turning into the Hulk. It's odd.
It did. It just felt a little out of place. Why for this movie? It didn't feel like that's kind of when I come back to. I think Sam was great. I think Ross was great. It just kind of felt like they weren't. It should have been Sam's story when it was a Hulk story. Damon, does the MCU have a villain problem? What did you think about the Red Hulk, Samuel Stearns, the leader, and Sidewinder in this movie?
I could have so dealt without Sidewinder in this movie. Like, that did absolutely nothing for me here. I was actually more sad that I didn't see Seth Rollins on screen doing his stupid little laugh.
Why wasn't he like the big guy that Sam had to fight? It felt like that would have been a perfectly easy. This is this guy of the Serpent Society, my top goon. Fight him.
That top goon is called Copperhead in the credits. I guess because his knives are shaped like fang. Like it's not what we were hoping for with our ridiculous Serpent Society.
Yeah, I thought Esposito was unfortunately pretty wasted in here. As for this portrayal of the leader, didn't do too much for me because, like I said, he turned more into like a probability guy, and then all of a sudden by the very end can just like see the future, like a psychic. Like things that should have like a 0.00% probability in reality, and just like, nah, this is happening. And you're like, okay.
I've run the numbers, and I know there are infinite universes that are going to cause incursions, and the other Avengers, they're gonna fuck you up. I'm sorry, mess you up. I keep
fine.
cursing.
I thought
We don't
this
need to
is what I
curse.
was going to chime in last time and say, and I realized I was muted. I thought there was some kind of rule of like we can only have one F-bomb, otherwise we get like too high of a rating and it affects monetization. In the last few Invincible shows, I've been dropping them like crazy, just because it's hard not to for Invincible, and it hasn't affected shit. So I think we're fine. I totally think we're fine as long as it's not like in the first 5 minutes or last 5 minutes.
Good to know, because occasionally this movie makes you want to say, fuck. And now we can.
I agree with Ryan Pratt and Kat in chat. Unless he pops up in a sequel, Esposito was mostly wasted. He is has an ability of being such like a sinister and menacing actor with so much gravitas, and I did feel like that was missing a little bit with this character, of just shoehorned in a little bit as opposed to having an actual important role. Let's talk about Mr. Torres, Joaquin Torres, because we got a new Falcon in this. I thought the action with him and the suit looked absolutely incredible. I think for the most part, Danny Ramirez gave a really strong performance. The dialogue was a little weird for him. Like I felt like they couldn't decide if they want to make him cool, the tech guy, the comedic relief, and he was just kind of stuck between all of them. But at the same time, while it made for some awkward dialogue, I actually thought it fit the character really well, because this is a dude who wants to be a superhero, but has never been on that level before. And he's now teaming up with his mentor, who was his hero. And he is a little bit of a fish out of water. He's a little bit of like that high school kid who, you know, the 10th grader made the varsity team, and he's the only 9th or 10th grader on the team. And so he's trying to act really cool in front of the people who have been there before. I did think it fit the character. What do you think of Torres, Dave?
I think you're right. I need to watch it again and not be suspecting him the whole time, because how it went, at least in my notes, if I'm looking at Sam. So Isaiah shoots at the president. Sam goes to visit Isaiah. He says his phone's been acting weird. I go, it's the phone. Torres took the cover off. It's Torres's fault. So he takes this little plastic cover off Isaiah's phone, and before it's revealed it's like the light flashes, I thought he had like, you know, put some sort of chemical through contact by like being like, let's take a selfie, touch your phone. And so I was like, Torres is the mole, man. I was so Winter Soldier pilled going into this. I'm like, where's the mole? And it ended up not being a mole. So the way you described his arc is the arc that's in the movie, guys. TJ has accurately described the arc. And I think he did a fine performance. I just think I misread more than half of it, because I'm like, when is he gonna do it? I will say that at the end, I really like the scene with both of them sort of joking in the hospital. I like the idea that he's gonna be on the Avengers team, but I do think this movie does a lot in saying that maybe he should be guy in the chair for the Avengers, not necessarily two guys with wings in the Avengers, because you know what, he does blow himself up. Like he apologizes, but he does blow himself up.
And he is a really good guy in the chair, dude in the desk, if you wanted to talk about it from your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. The leader, in
through
theory,
coding, he undoes whatever the leader's plan is, even though the leader's plan seems to be bio-based. But like, again, that's how good Joaquin Torres is.
He undoes it through coding, and also he tricks and surprises the leader by utilizing this insanely complicated and underutilized strategy of tracing a phone call. And so, you know, if it's not, it couldn't be that easy to trace the leader of all people, the gamma-infused brain genius. Couldn't be that easy to trace his call. Surely he'd have some precautions in place. So Torres must be that special.
No, that seemed
performance.
That part seemed intentional on the leader's part to make sure that they get there to possibly get him.
But
out.
he was surprised. He didn't think they were going to show up there.
He said there was a small probability of it. He didn't say it was 0%, but he said it was a small possibility. My thing with this character is, do you know, TJ, of Joaquin Torres, the comic book version of Joaquin Torres?
All I know is that he became a Falcon. I don't know too much else about him.
Quite literally, he became a Falcon person.
Like are they going to be? Do you think that last scene with them operating on him, they're putting in some bird parts?
At one point, when he goes down and he's in that water and he's getting operated on, I'm like, are we actually gonna?
Are they gonna put the bird?
Are we gonna like birdie this man, or is this actually gonna happen? Obviously, it didn't. But maybe there's a version out there, ladies and gentlemen, where he turns into a bird person, and that would be kind of funny. I thought his performance was pretty solid. He was the heart of the film. He was fun. He was lighthearted mostly. I liked it.
I just, even putting aside all of the controversy with the character of Ruth, and she wasn't Sabra, she was changed. But even so, I, to be honest, don't even know why they gave any type of inclusion of this character. She was so meh for me throughout the entire movie. She didn't seem menacing. She didn't seem imposing. She didn't seem have any of like the mysterious charisma that both Yelena and Natasha had as Black Widows. It just kind of seemed like a bit of a useless character for me. For a beautifully well thought out and articulated breakdown of the controversy and why it was maybe inappropriate to include this character in the movie, make sure to check out Ryan's review of Captain America Brave New World up on Agents of Fandom, because he does an incredible job breaking all of that down and articulating his thoughts. But it really just kind of felt like there was no need for her to be there. You know who that character should have been? That should have been Sharon Carter. That should have been Sharon Carter working with the president and having her power broker on the side. Why the hell?
Sharon Carter is VP? Hold on. What if Sharon Carter is VP?
Sharon Carter is the vice president. You know what?
Sharon Carter should have been the vice president and should have been.
That's the way you close this plot hole. Is everybody being like, shouldn't that have been Sharon? You're like, oh, she was the vice president. Don't worry about it. Yeah, great. I would love President Sharon Carter. You know what America would take super normally is if nobody voted for the first woman president. She just got ushered in because oops, we elected a Hulk. Anyway, maybe because the Winter Soldier, Captain America 2, the Winter Soldier, was like vaguely about the Edward Snowden stuff right as the Edward Snowden stuff was like happening. Like they had written the movie beforehand, and then it happened to also hit the news when like it hit. And we're like, oh yeah, it's like a down and dirty thriller. But the more you think about it, the more you don't. I don't want Marvel movies telling me what they think about politics. So I think maybe that's what we learned in Secret Invasion.
The dialogue where it was like, I mean, I know we don't like him, but it's still the president. Let's go to the White House. Cool. That to me was a little too much. Like, ooh.
Or the president being like, if somebody's going to control that, if one country is going to control adamantium, it's us. And I'm like, okay, cool. But also, Elon Musk just brought his son into a press conference. I don't think this is funny. So it's like it's a really odd balance. But you know what, Sharon Carter being like a 24 season 5 mole president, I am actually for that. That seems interesting to me.
A shout out to Nate Shelton calling his shot. Bolivar Trask is the vice president. He is going to be the next president of the MCU. Insert the MCU's Sentinel storyline. And I got to shout out Nate's other comment because I agree 100%. Carl Lumbly was, if not the MVP, I think Sam was the MVP of this movie, but Carl Lumbly was definitely diamond in the rough, the really unsung hero. That's the term I was looking for. The unsung hero of this movie. His performance was incredible. And I really think that this movie suffered when it sidelined him.
Yeah, I also think that like that's the whole idea of when you're a soldier for a country, what does that do to you and what does that mean when you're serving your country is here in what I think the original plot to this movie was. It's there for the Isaiah Bradley character. It technically should be there for the Ruth Bat Seraph character, regardless of if she's a Black Widow or a hero. Same actual thing. When you when you make yourself a weapon for service, what does that mean? And then I think the movie starts to sort of shake apart a little bit. When Carl Lumbly gets, incarcerated, but also when Carl Lumbly gets incarcerated and they kind of just stop talking about him for a while, where Cap's like, well, I better go prove the president wrong. And I'm like, dude, they just locked up the other Black Captain America. Break him out or something. Steve Rogers broke you out of the raft. Like, if you don't
I know it's not a 1-for-1 Steve to Bucky and Isaiah and Sam, not at all.
Right.
But I couldn't help but think, and I'm not one to compare Sam to Steve like other people were doing throughout this entire movie. I think he's his own man. He's his own Captain America, and he's incredible at it. But I couldn't help but think, if somebody locked up unjustly somebody that meant this much to Steve, he's burning the government down on the spot. Yeah. Like on the spot, he's saying, fuck no, not allowed. You are not taking him in.
If I have one problem with the Sam Wilson Captain America, it's that I love the idea of like a therapist talkie Cap, but they don't give him any of like the fucking baller things they let Steve Rogers Cap say in the comics. Like, why isn't Sam Wilson doing the hold the line here if you know you're right speech from like the Captain America comics? Why are his speeches so bad if he's the speechifying Captain America? I wanted it a little bit more. And again, the first half of this movie, I think, is setting something like that up before it has to deal with adamantium and Hulks. But like, that's the sort of thing where it's like, when these characters come back, I would like that. If you want to do a grounded political like Captain America film, I think you have a whole bunch of things about what does it mean to serve. I think that's baked into the Avengers. I think that's something they're also going to tease with the Thunderbolts. Like, can you redeem yourself through some sort of like greater service? You don't have to make it about like actual A plus B equals C politics, but it does feel weird that Sam Wilson is just like, well, he shot at the president. And I don't think that was him, but the easiest way to solve this is to just like delve as deep as we possibly can into whatever the CIA is doing in the Indian Ocean. And I'm like, oh, okay, man, I guess. There's just that's one of the threads that sort of went unconnected to me, is the Isaiah Bradley thread, where the poor guy just sits in solitary confinement for an indeterminate amount of time, but far too long. For how important I think he is to this movie.
I'm not going back in that box. And then he goes in the box.
And he goes in the box
for 20 plus minutes of the movie.
And they give him solitary confinement, but they have to have him in a room with a window once. So he has a solitary confinement with a window to the outside of the prison, which doesn't seem that bad. I don't know.
Damon, how do you feel about when he was kind of taken out of this movie? Do you agree that he was one of the very best parts?
He was, if not the best part of the movie, in my opinion. So the second you kind of put him away, and a lot of the goodness kind of goes away with it. Like I said, the first act of this movie was probably my favorite act of this movie, and it's no coincidence that he plays a pretty major part in that first act.
I agree 100%. Damon, I'll keep it with you here. Give me your, not necessarily final thoughts, but any qualms we haven't talked about, any favorite parts that we haven't talked about, any theories you may have going forward for this movie. I still want to talk post-credit scene after this. Genuinely, I think one of the things that bothers me is, me, I love a surprise. I love being shocked. That's why Captain America Winter Soldier is my favorite Marvel movie, is because to me, that was just constant twists and turns. I did not see the Hydra thing coming prior to that movie. Like, from the promotional, from what I heard going in, I had no idea we were going to get this big earth-shattering turn that would change my favorite show, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., the very next week that I watched it. It would completely shatter everything, the entirety of the MCU. And so I love a surprise. The only surprise I got in this movie was, as Aisha brings it up in chat, I was the only surprise, and obviously we speculated Bucky could be in this movie. It was part of our primer. But like that moment where I was like, Bucky's here, Bucky's here, Bucky's here. That was like the one, yay, MCU cameo connectivity moment that I had.
Yeah, but I'd say I had about the same amount of weight as seeing Valkyrie.
Yeah.
It was pretty quick. Come in, say hi. You're like, hey, there's Bucky. And he's like, well, I'm going to go off and tease what I'm doing in Thunderbolts now. And then goes on with his way. And I was like, all right, you do you, Bucky.
It gave me a lot of questions. Yeah. What state is Bucky going to be a congressman from? I think that's interesting. We're just electing 100-year-old ex-Russian agents now. Actually, you know what? That tracks.
That tracks.
Tracks.
Whether it's Kingpin for mayor, whether it's Thunderbolt Ross for president, whether it's a former Hydra asset assassin who is over 100 years old. There is no, in media, not just the MCU in media, there is no, okay, come on, this guy wouldn't get elected. That doesn't exist anymore. You can throw whoever you want in a position of leadership and you don't even need to justify it. And I'll go, I guess.
Yep. The American people would do that. We are a bunch of fucks. I agree with that. Another one. That's a well-deserved one there for me. There was one. I don't know if this is a thing or if I was at this point just like so Marvel brained. That's not Wonder Man doing the bike riding video for the president, is it?
No, I didn't think so.
Okay. I was looking for Yahya Abdul-Mateen's credit like way down at the end of the credits. It's just like workout specialist or something, and I was gonna be like, because I know apparently in that series he's an actor in the MCU, and so I was like, maybe he shows up on that. But yeah, Bucky was the surprise for me because I didn't know. Again, that was the Amadeus Cho spot I was being told, and it was a Bucky spot, and it is nice to see Bucky.
Yeah, it was really nice to see Bucky. I was looking for Amadeus Cho's face up on up on the leaders like list of people that he was genetically testing. That's where I thought maybe we were going to get a little Amadeus Cho. Damon, what do you got?
So the one my last thing about this movie before we move on to the post-credit scene, and look, I'm a white man in America. It's not really my place to say this, but I've heard a lot of people talking about this, and I feel like it would be beside ourselves to bring it up because the last 5 minutes of the movie had probably, if not easily, the most emotion and weight behind it, and a lot of it is just about the Black excellence with Captain America, with Sam Wilson having to be this entire movie. I wish this movie had more of that throughout its entirety. And not just the last 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm. It does sort of feel like someone thinks Black excellence is for the Black Panther series, and I don't think it needs to be that like sheltered off. I get why, because again we were talking about, and Damon pointed out, like the suit is what helps him go up against like Red Hulk, but also like if you're expecting me to hear the song Mr. Blue and go, oh, that's what his nickname was in The Incredible Hulk in 2008, that's why he's using that as a trigger song, then I feel like you also don't need to keep bringing up Wakanda and how like everyone's dependent on Wakanda. There's a whole new metal out there, man. That's what this movie's about. Let American Black people get some shine on them.
Didn't it seem like a wasted opportunity? And I don't want to skirt past this because I actually want to talk more about it, but it seemed like such a wasted opportunity to not go. And I know I'm a little bit, hurt just because this was my theory that I had from months ago. But Red Hulk in the comics is susceptible to adamantium. What's one of his weaknesses? It's adamantium. So why not have him get his ass kicked and then have Sam get a little adamantium in those wings and then kick his ass right back? It seemed like such a perfect opportunity. But going back to what you said, Damien, that was a really good point, because I thought, especially in a movie where you have a character like Thunderbolt Ross, who as a white man in America just fails upward over and over and over and over. Each time he fucks up, he has a higher rank the next time that we see him.
Mhm.
And so Sam talking about like, I have to be perfect. I have to be on point because if I screw up once, that's what they're going to remember. And so I have to be at my best all of the time because standards for a black man in America are higher for a white man in America.
Mhm.
You screw up once, that's what they remember you for as a black man. You screw up once as a white man, nobody gives a damn because they remember the one good thing that you did. And I thought that was a really, really interesting point that they touched on, but should have been more important. I think that was a really great point, Damon. Dave, final thoughts before we go into the post-credit scene.
There's a way where I don't mind this movie again once I see the third part of what I feel this movie is, a second part to a whole bunch of different storylines that are going to go somewhere. And I can't wait. I can't wait to see Cap's or Sam Wilson's Avengers show up fully formed at the beginning of Avengers Doomsday and get pounded into the ground to show us how badass Doom is. And like, if that's what it is, I'm glad I had this time with these people. I feel like a lot of the stuff that we're building in this new shaken phase 5 and phase 6 is we thought we were slowly building to a villain. Now we're going to have to take the heroes that we sort of half built and shove them into a plot sort of as formed as they are now. So it's really hard in something like this, which I think was initially conceived as much like Multiverse of Madness was supposed to take the handoff from WandaVision. This was supposed to take the handoff from Falcon and the Winter Soldier initially. And it was supposed to do something like the Winter Soldier did for you, TJ, where it's like something happened on TV and then it had an effect in the movies. But COVID, strikes, the fact that a streaming schedule is completely different than a theatrical release schedule because you have to worry about releasing against stuff. All of those things sort of messed up that plan. So now a lot of these movies, much like Multiverse of Madness, sort of reiterate but less effectively some of the things the series did. So what I see in Marvel right now is a bunch of characters that are posed for the biggest event in their life. I haven't seen anyone's biggest event of their life yet, so I can't wait to see what our next Avengers level threat is. I guess I will give them some credit that an Avengers level threat is probably going to have to be huge because I've seen so many lesser heroes deal with gigantic threats. Maybe that is giving some suspense, but I'm in a real phase 2 feeling right now where I'm like, I see that these are going somewhere and I think I know where they're going, but having, written the Marvel book, I know that there's still a very good chance that they'll never get there. So I'm really just hoping that Brave New World is a step for all of these characters. I'm not sure if it's the small contained character piece that I would want it to be if it was something like a Winter Soldier, more grounded sort of thing. This has to become a jet fight movie around a Celestial with a Red Hulk at the end. And if that's what it's going to do, that's fine. But it does leave, I think, a lot of its characters in the middle of their arc, which does, I guess, overall, bottom line, this movie can be saved for me a lot if it is a very meaningful center part. But who knows? It's all improv, it seems like.
I got to give a quick shout out to everybody watching live right now. Smash that like button. The chat has been awesome. Thank you so much to those who are tuning in every week. We got Ryan, we got Aisha, as per usual, but we got some new people in here as well. I see Ryan Pratt. I see Nate Shelton. I see a few other names as well. So I want to thank you for tuning in live. Smash the like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell. But I also just got a message from my friend who I haven't got a chance to talk with in a while, former co-host of mine with the Ticket to Reality podcast, as well as finalist of season 2 of The Circle on Netflix. Author Lee Swift is watching us right now, and so I got to shout out Lee as well because that's my guy, and I haven't talked to him in a while. So thanks so much for watching us, Lee. And Ex-Punisher throwing me off with the random comments. I was getting Pride and Tom Holland Spidey in the MCU. But Damon, give me a rating out of 10, but also, and I think this is to me is more important, more exciting than just like a simple rating out of 10. Give me your, not obviously exact spot because there's so many damn projects in the MCU now.
Lord, you're gonna do this to me?
But give me a project that like, I think this movie was a little bit better than this, a little bit worse than this. What range is it for you of your MCU rankings? I'll go first, give you a chance to think about it.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm right in like I'm going to go like 6.8 out of 10. I don't think, maybe not quite a 7, but better than a 6.5 is kind of how I viewed this one. The positives outweigh the negatives. I thought the performances from the actors were awesome. I thought the Red Hulk looked incredible. I just thought the story was a little bit stitched together and left me wanting more. I would put it right in like the maybe between Iron Man 2 and Iron Man 3. Maybe in like the Captain Marvel range of Black Widow range of the MCU for me. Damon, how about you?
Oh, Black Widow and Captain Marvel slander in front of my face.
I like the only thing in the MCU I did not enjoy is Secret Invasion.
Okay,
everything else, my second last project behind Secret Invasion is Thor, and I still really like the first Thor movie. It's just in comparison to all these other things I love. Aisha, don't give me that sass for having Captain Marvel in my bottom third. You know I love the Marvels.
Okay. After some thought, this is where I'm at. I was always going to be at like a 6.5 for this movie. I gave it like a 3 out of 5, 6.5 to be more kind of kind. I'd put it with like an Ant-Man and the Wasp realm for me.
Dave, how about you?
I'm going to, I mean, I love 6.5. Feels good to my heart. Let's all agree. Sounds great to me. It just comparing it to other ones, it has a messy script that is the result of a bunch of writers, some of which I know, some of which I don't. But because of that, it feels a lot chunkier to me than some of the other movies. So I'm trying to think about what to compare it to. Ant-Man and the Wasp is good because Ant-Man and the Wasp was something where it's like, this one's coming out in between Infinity War and Endgame. And it's like, nope, we're just a heist movie. And I kind of respected it for that, for just being like, we know exactly what we are. We don't care where our release date is. We'll give you a post-credit scene, sure. But like, you know, whatever. So Ant-Man and the Wasp is probably a good pull, but I also feel like it feels like Avengers Age of Ultron, where you see the beginnings of all this stuff that you want to see, but you're like, where did the other half of the story go? And hopefully we get it. Hopefully we get it.
I like it. Last thing I want to talk about is the post-credit scene in this movie. And there's one part specifically that I want to talk about with it, because first of all, I think the scene in general kind of sucked. I saw Leader the whole movie. I didn't need to see more of him in the post-credit scene saying Secret Wars was going to happen. This post-credit scene should have been Sam beginning to assemble the Avengers.
Mm-hmm.
At best, it should have been another version of the Shang-Chi post-credit scene where he's meeting these people for the first time. It's still ridiculous that we haven't seen anything to do with that. That should have been Sam with Shang-Chi, with Torres, whoever else, the beginnings of the Avengers team. Have Carol swoop in at the last second and be like, we getting the band back together? Something like that. If you can't get everybody, if that is too much money, it didn't work with schedules, whatever it is, what we should have had then is Sam and Torres making a list, scratching names off, adding new names, building themselves a little roster of who they think the Avengers should be. That's what the post-credit scene should have been. But the one part of this I will say that looks interesting. There have been multiple different iterations of Secret Wars. Obviously, two main ones in the comics. You got Hickman's and you got the OG.
Shooters. Yes, Jim Shooters.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also all these different cartoon variations and things like that as well. I found it very interesting that the leader specifically talked about what about these other heroes and these other worlds that you're going to be fighting against? I thought, to me, that was very telling as to how potentially this Secret Wars story could go. You know, maybe not just a good versus bad on Battle World type of situation, but a survival of the fittest among universes with potentially opposing heroes competing against each other. What did you think of?
Essentially, yeah.
Am I reading too much into that, Dave, or is that you?
Oh no,
think,
my
Dave,
my
you think
thought
that's how it's gonna go?
my thought is Secret Wars is like 6 different teams. Like instead of 6 heroes make the Avengers, it's like you're following Future Foundation, which comes out of FF. You're following X-Men, which comes out of Deadpool, whatever thing. You're following, like, because this is how Hickman's Secret War was. You had all these different worlds, and they have little teams that would form against. I think it was like the A team was all female Avengers or some such thing that America Chavez led. I think it'd be interesting to see that because there are all these combinations. Like I was trying to make an Avengers in my mind, and there are a bunch of combinations I want to see, and I'm like, maybe that's the juice. Is that like Deadpool and Wolverine, we want to see a bunch of these things, and we have all these characters in media res, and we have all these returning actors. Like, how do you make that a thing if it isn't like a bunch of different teams going at each other? So I feel like it's maximalism is how I would go for Secret Wars, because I don't know. I feel like there's still some panic sweat on Marvel, and the fact that Deadpool and Wolverine did so well with essentially a light Secret Wars, I think is going to push them a little bit more in that direction.
Damon?
Yeah, no, I've been saying it's got to be Hickman's-esque, especially now that you brought Doom into it all. Like we were all wondering if Kang at one point was going to replace
Beyonder
Doom in that whole thing, or like TJ and I have kind of theorized that Loki is going to kind of play like the Beyonder type role now because of the power that he holds. But it has to be, in my opinion, like the Hickman style. It doesn't have to be the full story, the very political-esque story. Although that's the thing that, to me, makes Hickman's Secret Wars so amazing, is that Doom literally just stole Reed's family and then played God and is really good at being a god.
Yeah.
So when you are also finalizing the multiverse saga as well in Hickman's Secret Wars, that is the multiverse. All of what is left of it is on Battle World. So it would make sense to have you put that, add a twist, and it's kind of like whoever wins out wins reality in the end. And in conclusion, it'll probably just be like a hodgepodge of things, which is why one of my earliest theories is that's how we're going to get the X-Men. The X-Men are probably, I would actually, thinking about it now, I'd love to see an X-Men movie come out right before Secret Wars, establish their universe, have an incursion, throw them on Battle World, and then that's how you bring that reality into our now 616 MCU, whatever main timeline after that. And they're kind of like brought in, and it's a hodgepodge of all of those realities thrown into one, which is obviously how we're probably going to get the F4 as well.
Yeah, I don't think there's any chance we actually get that before Secret Wars, but I agree with you that that'd be better. Like if we had, I thought that's what, to me, the multiverse saga needed to be doing, is establishing these other story, like universes and stories throughout the multiverse, where, you know, you get a little tease of it in the Marvels when Monica goes to see Kelsey Grammer's Beast and her mama, but she's Photon, or no, she's sorry, why do I always forget the name? Binary, thank you. Give me a little bit more of that. I got to imagine that'll be one of the teams that pops into the Secret Wars movie. But I do think it'd be really interesting. Just off rip right now, even though this has nothing to do with Captain America, do you think in Secret Wars we will see the makings of the new young X-Men team that will be the MCU's going forward? Or do you think we will only see older X-Men characters we have already seen before?
I think we'll absolutely start seeing, if you're talking about newer castings of our classic characters.
Like, do you think we'll see our new Cyclops, our new Jean, etc. in Secret Wars?
Yes.
I think it's very possible. There's one thing that gives me hesitance, and that is, if for a movie to be this packed, you have to really make sure that the characters are there to do what you want. And with someone like Channing Tatum's Gambit being like such a, you know, fan favorite, despite the fact that he was literally never in an X-Men movie, but you know who Gambit is, you know who Channing Tatum is. I think if they don't, have your Sadie Sinks cast for the new X-Men or whatever by the time Secret Wars starts shooting next summer, I think you could bring those legacy people back, and we would just be like, even if it's, it's dumb, but if you're going to have Blade show up in Secret Wars, I kind of think it needs to be Wesley Snipes' Blade, because we don't know Mahershala Ali's Blade. He needs a movie so we get to know him. So I think Secret Wars, in order to bring the multiversal saga back, might be the last part of this, reclaiming all of the Marvel projects. So I would say, and I almost said this was never going to be possible, but you know what? Marvel's been taking some L's. I would expect Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Secret Wars before I would expect new X-Men and Secret Wars.
Bring them back. Bring them back. That's why we say welcome to level 7 at the beginning of every podcast. We're manifesting it. We're putting that good juju in the air. We want Agent
If you need
May.
more team members for the Future
Agent
Foundation,
Johnson.
get Medusa back. Save Medusa. We could save all the Marvel projects if we want. If we can
Cloak
make
and Dagger, bring it back. Baby.
bring them back. Yeah. Where are Hulu Runaways? I really think it's all chips on the table. And I think in order for us to do that, it needs to be chips that we're familiar with, because otherwise it's going to feel like someone's getting the short shrift. I'm already kind of worried about Avengers Doomsday, because that movie has to spend so much time establishing Doom and why he looks like Tony Stark. Yeah,
and the movie is going to be assembling the Avengers now.
To be 4 hours long each.
I mean,
need that in my life.
Yeah, I mean, but if it's anything like Infinity War, whatever Avengers team we're going to get introduced to, we're getting introduced so they could lose. So I don't know. It's the premium right now is well-developed characters. Marvel has as many movies and as many shows as it wants to deploy. We had 1 year of one movie, and that made $1 billion. And they were like, well, what if we could make $3 billion? So we're back 3 movies a year. But I think the currency that they have right now is 30 some movies is time to make characters your own. So Captain America, Thor, the quote unquote 2012 original Avengers lineup, those characters were all bottom of the barrel characters in 2008. And they're like, we're going to build them up. So I have really high hopes for all these characters that have been sort of left by the wayside. I just really hope that there's a good way to use them. Because if it's something like Brave New World where they get half of a story, that's less exciting to me than if Namor shows up to kiss Storm. I'm cool with that. I've seen his arc. He just shows up and kisses the Storm, and I'm like, cool. What's gonna go on with that? Is there gonna be another Black Panther? Is there gonna be a love triangle somewhere in the future? How do I explain this to Damon, big comic guy, so you know what's coming or what the arcs they could be pulling from.
Mm-hmm.
And that's sort of where I was in 2008. And I was like, oh, obviously we're building it to World War Hulk. We're building whatever. The currency that the MCU has actually gotten is it has successfully made film versions of these characters that work on their own. And I hope that's the premium they have going forward. But I would love a cameo fest as much as everybody else.
I'd love to keep chatting all night because I'm having a lot of fun. The chat is absolutely popping right now, but it is getting late.
It is Friday for you guys.
It's Damon's already after midnight. Damon, I'll throw it to you first. You don't have any socials anymore. You're hiding from the world, but what's coming up on the Comic Corner podcast this weekend?
Oh man, we talked about, speaking of Doom just became the ruler of the whole world in the 616 in Marvel Comics. It's called One World Under Doom. We talked about that first issue of what seems like it's an 8-month long event, everybody. So we talked about that and Absolute Batman and a lot more. That's out Saturday.
Dave, where can the people find you on socials? Where can they find your various podcasts, upcoming books, things like that?
Well, if you head to DA70 on Blue Sky or Letterboxd, you could follow me there. Also still on Twitter but don't mostly just promoting content those days. I don't want to take you anywhere you don't want to go. So definitely Blue Sky, Letterboxd if you want. Fightinginthewarroom.com. We're about to have our 500th episode coming up. It's been a fun, I don't know, it's 15 years, 16 years with those guys. I talk like we're ending. We're not. It's just a milestone. So check us out there. And then if you want to read about Marvel, the MCUbook.com. Very simple URL. You could buy it from a publisher. Enjoy reading it.
And enjoy reading the nice little snippet of the Agents of Fandom review on the back of the book as well. Thank you so much to everyone who joined us. Thank you so much to Dave for joining us as well. Dave, halfway through the season, I think we might have to get you on for an episode of our Severance podcast as well here. We will be live tomorrow at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern, talking about episode 5, season 2 of Severance. Myself, Rachel Leishman, Rachel Tollison, and Leah Murillo. We will be back next week talking more Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, more Invincible, and of course Severance. So thank you so much to everyone who joined. Hit the like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you don't miss out. Follow the Agents of Fandom on socials at Agents Fandom on TikTok and Twitter. Agents of Fandom everywhere else. We will see you next time. Thank you for joining us. Peace.